you can share little details about yourself, your organization, what product categories you deal in, which location are you joining, and that will help other members also understand about yourself. And at the same time, it will also help us to know you better, and also share with us in case there's a particular item or there's a particular topic for which you wanted to understand more, and if you want us to do a webinar, so we'll be more than happy to do that. So in next few moments, you'll start seeing my screen, and then we'll get started with today's e-commerce learning session. So let's get started with today's e-commerce learning session. And once again, good afternoon and a warm welcome to all the participants. My name is Adnan, and this is where we are getting started with today's e-commerce learning session. And today's session, I'm not sure if you are aware, is a special session that we are doing. And this is the second session in a series of 3 webinars that we are doing every week. So first webinar has already happened on 6th of April. And that's where I have shared information, or I've shared insights on if you are from a fashion business or if you are a business owner and you want to create a functional e-commerce website for your business, then how can you do that? We have shared an example as well. And the recording of that webinar is available on our YouTube channel. That is GlobalLinker. You can just go to YouTube and search for GlobalLinker. Otherwise, I'll also be sharing the link of that video in the chat shortly, so you can review that, and that's where you'll be able to understand. If you already don't have an e-commerce website, you can review that webinar's recording, and you'll be able to understand. I have given a detailed walkthrough in terms of how you can create an online store. Now, this is where we are stepping further, and we are understanding how you can create a digital catalog, because for any e-commerce website or any e-commerce entity, catalog or products are like heart and soul, and if they are not done up properly, that's where you'll not be able to get the desired results. And that's where I have personally experienced that a lot of members put in a monumental amount of effort in getting the website built. They put in a lot of effort on how the information is presented, or how the banners are designed, or how the fonts are used. So they put in a lot of effort in the visual aspects of it. However, something which is core and critical gets overlooked, and that's your digital catalog, or that's your product catalog. And the objective of today's session is to give you tips and tools which you can use to create a fantastic product catalog that can help you sell digitally. So let's get started with today's webinar. And once again, warm welcome to everyone. Now, something before getting started, I just thought of sharing. A lot of webinars that you may have attended, I have also attended, are very one-way information flow, whereas in this kind of a webinar, I typically prefer to have a more interactive webinar, and how will we communicate amongst ourselves. So we have chat, so you can use chat. So I'll keep on asking questions with you. You can keep answering them using chat. Now, at any given point of time, if you have a question, so don't just keep it in your mind that when we'll reach to the end of the webinar, that's where I'll ask the question. You may forget it. So that's where whenever the question clicks, just you are seeing a Q&A section on the Zoom interface, just add that question there, and I'll be more than happy to discuss that at the end of the webinar. We'll have a detailed section wherein we'll be answering, or I will be answering your questions. So let's get started with today's webinar, and we'll start with today's presentation. So first of all, let's quickly understand about myself. So let me move this here. So as you might be knowing, my name is Adnan. I am Director SME e-commerce growth at GlobalLinker. I have more than 1.5 decades of experience. And at GlobalLinker, I take care of GlobalLinker's e-commerce platform, Linker.store, and strategic initiatives in India and Philippines. In addition to that, I am an active public speaker, and I love to interact and engage with SMEs. I love to educate them, and that's where I keep on doing regular training sessions and webinars. And so far, I have done more than 300 training sessions and webinars and trained more than 10,000 SMEs and business owners in India and Philippines. Quickly moving ahead and understanding what all topics we'll be discussing here in today's session. So we'll start with basically understanding what is a digital catalog. That's the first topic that we'll be discussing here today. After that, we'll discuss about the key components of a digital catalog. Then we'll discuss the best practices. That's where I share with you tips on how you can yourself very easily create a functional and transactional digital catalog, or a catalog that sells online. After that, we'll have a discussion about different tools and resources that you can use. And that's where I'll share different tools that I personally use and that you can also use. And most of those tools are free, so you'll be able to use them very easily. Lastly, we'll have the question answer round in the fifth section. So let's get started. We have a lot of distance to cover. So let's get started. We'll start with the first topic that we have. What is a digital catalog? So a digital catalog is basically a website or a computer file that provides information about a person's work or your product catalog, which can be easily accessed by a prospective customer. So it is basically your product's presentation. Now, that can be a computer file as well. However, from the e-commerce perspective or from the selling's perspective, just having it on your device does not serve the purpose. You need to have it in a space or it in an ecosystem where it is easily accessible by anyone who's interested to do a business with you. That's where it becomes important that that file is accessible. Now, there are now digital catalog consists of the following. So graphic images, so these are typically your product images or illustration of the product, then text, which comprises of the product title, product description, additional information, which is more information about the product, or a long description, which is also referred as. Now, here, a question that gets frequently asked with respect to the digital catalog is that, are the product images in your smartphone? A lot of people do this practice, or what they do is they take images or they click pictures of the product using their smartphone. Are they your digital catalog? No, they are not your digital catalog. Second is a lot of businesses create PDF files, brochures, or they create a presentation and convert that into a PDF file. Is that a product catalog or a digital catalog? Not exactly. And why so? Because the second criteria you see with respect to a digital catalog in the modern or in the new normal space is that accessibility. You may have a fantastic, beautiful, stunning looking presentation about your products, or you may have a professionally designed brochure, but it is lying in your device, it is lying in your smartphone or in your laptop. And that's where it is not accessible. So it is not attracting customers to you, or it can be reviewed by people who are not in touch with you. So this is where your business is not working while you are sleeping. Whereas if your catalog is digital, if it is online, that's where it will work even when you'll be sleeping and you'll not be working on it. So that's a critical aspect which is missing. And that's where if you look at the digital catalog from a layman's or a common person's understanding, it will be an e-commerce website where you have your product presentation so that people can see your product, they can understand about your product, and if they are interested, they can buy, or they can send you an inquiry that we are interested to buy your product. So that's a digital catalog in a simple terms. Let's move to the next point. Why is having a good digital catalog important? Now, this is quite obvious, but let's understand, or let's get into a little nitty-gritty of it. So why do you have to have a digital catalog? Now, when we were young, and it happens even today, that is whenever we are, let me just move it down. Yeah. So you'll also agree that whenever we are wanting to buy, and traditionally in my childhood days, there used to be one uncle who will have a store, and whenever we wanted to buy any electronic appliances, we'll go there because he is so good with his information. He'll understand our requirement, and then he'll explain the product so much in detail that you'll buy it from you. Or it can be a sales representative in one of those stores, or you go to a store to buy garments or your fashion products, and because the person is very polite, and again he understands your requirement, and then he presents the desired product. So that's where, because you are getting the required information that you want to make that purchase decision, that's where you are going over and over again, or you are going again and again to that particular business. And that's the fundamental reason. Now here, the challenge in the digital ecosystem is that you yourself and or your salesperson is not present in front of the customer. It is the product that is doing the selling. So that's where, if you don't have a good digital catalog, you'll not have good sales. Or in a positive sense, a good digital catalog is equal to good online sales. So that's where it is critical, just understanding the fundamental that your product is selling itself. So you'll have to give it everything that makes it capable of converting a customer. So that's the fundamental simple point we have to keep in mind. And that's where digital catalog is so important. Now let's quickly understand what are the key components of having a good digital catalog. So the following are the components. So first one is having a good e-commerce website. And when I say a good e-commerce website, how do we define, or how do we understand what is a good e-commerce website? So here are a few broad parameters that I'm sharing with you that you can keep in mind. Firstly, it should be device responsive. In these days, most of the websites are device responsive, but again, I'll share a couple of more points that you can keep in mind. Second point is it should be fast. If your website is slow, that's where you'll lose customers, because if it is not loading up properly, they'll just move to another option, and the other option is just a click away. The third point is it should be presentable and complete as well. And again, what we have observed reviewing hundreds or thousands of websites is there are very few elements or very key elements that get overlooked when people are getting or creating a website that can have a significant impact on your conversions. So we'll also have a discussion around that. Now comes the next important aspects of a digital catalog, that is navigation. It should be simple and it should be comprehensive. I'll be sharing details or I'll be explaining these topics in details in the coming slides. Then we have a product page. That is the core or heart of your digital catalog. And that's where what are the key components. So the first component is images. And why I have kept images on the top, because understand human beings are visual beings. So if you're telling someone, or if you're showing someone, the person to whom you are showing something, he'll be more, or he or she will be more convinced as compared to a person to whom you're just telling a story. So that's where just keep this fundamental fact in mind, that human beings are visual beings. The better is your presentation, better are your chances of getting an order or getting a conversion from a customer. Next is the product title. Then we have summary or short description of that product. Then we have additional information or long description of the product. Then we have returns and cancellation and exchange detail. This is where I can guess, or I can imagine that a lot of people will be getting confused. Product detail page, return, exchange, and cancellation, right? It is looking unusual, but I'll explain that in detail. Size chart in fashion industry, this is critical. You should add that. And lastly, the most important point, which is your metadata, meta title, keyword, and description. How can you add that, and what are the best practices? Again, I'll be sharing that. So this is, or you can see this is the construct of a good digital catalog. And I'll be now taking you through each of the point and sharing best practices, etc., with respect to each of these points. So let's get started. So let's understand the best practices, and we'll start with the e-commerce website. Let's understand with respect to e-commerce website, the first point, which is device responsive. Now, let me first explain to you what does device responsive means. So device responsive means when the person, and this is something that almost everyone knows, but I'm just sharing it for everyone's reference, that a significant amount of browsing, and if you look at the global numbers, it is somewhere between 70 to 80% of browsing happens through mobile devices, and mobile devices comprises of your smartphone predominantly, and tablets as well. So that's where a significant amount of browsing is happening. But the fundamental error or the fundamental mistake that people do is that whenever they are conceiving or whenever they are designing their website, they are designing it from a desktop orientation, which is a horizontal platform, whereas tablets or smartphones are vertical platform, and that's where the orientation is very different. Now, why do you need a responsive website? One is you'll be able to present the information in a better way. So let's look at this with an example. So this is a website that you're seeing. So this is how it appears on a desktop. So you're seeing a full screen edge to edge main banner, and then there are three banners which are not entirely visible, but you can still make out. Adjoining that is how it is appearing. So very similar. The difference is of the screen size. Now on the tablet, if you're looking at, so the main banner has also resized. This is a different banner, and the grid which you are seeing here in your desktop and laptop, which is three small banners just underneath the main banner, it is resized to two banner grid. So instead of three in one row, it is now two. Let's look at the mobile. So on the mobile, you can see it is just one banner. So the grid is resizing dynamically, and that's where the information is getting presented in a way. So even if the person is looking at the information on a mobile device where the screen is reasonably smaller, the information is presented in a way that the person can easily review that information. However, these days, just having a device responsive website is not sufficient. What else is needed? You need a provision where you can add mobile or smaller screen device related images or visuals. So what does that mean? So for example, you have this website, the particular website that we are looking at. Now here, if you compare the distance between the model and the text, which is here, let me just activate the pointer so that I can show it to you what I am referring. So here, just look at the distance which is here between the model image and the text that is appearing. Now here, look at the model image and the text. So it is how closer it is. So that's where what you can do is you can create, or you will be able to upload custom banners or custom images with respect to these devices. It will give you two advantages. One is you'll have a better load speed, and on a mobile, load speeds is a critical aspect. So you'll have a better load speed because you'll be uploading a smaller size image as compared to just resizing a large desktop image. The second advantage that you get, and which is very important these days, is that you have a banner which is custom designed for a vertical interface as compared to just resizing a horizontal banner. So on a desktop, you have a horizontal banner, and in a typical device responsive or a classic device responsive interface, what happens is the same banner is resized and displayed on a mobile device, whereas because it is designed for a vertical interface, so the font starts looking very small, or some portion of the banner gets cut, and that's where the information or the visuals are not very pleasing. Whereas if you are uploading a banner which is custom designed, keeping a mobile screen into perspective, that's where it will look stunning, and that's where your probability of impressing your customers and getting orders from them increases exponentially. So that's where having a device responsive website with an option to upload creatives specific to mobiles and tablets is very important. All right, let's move on to the next best practice that's again related to the e-commerce website, and this is where your website should be fast, and this is where lot of people will come, or a lot of people will give you different tools which are available. Few are available from Google as well, but a thumb rule that you can keep in mind to determine, because a lot of time website load speed is also dependent on the internet connection that you're using. So if you have a slower connection, that's where it gets affected. Or if your local DNS server is slow, or the server that you're using for hosting your website is slower. So that's where, again, there are many aspects that affect your website. Or you have used too many images on your home page, and that's where it is taking time to load. Or you have added too many products to your homepage components. So that's where, again, the load speed will get affected. So the thumb rule here to keep in mind is that it should be, if your website is loading in less than 2 seconds, that's where it is good enough. Now, in case you see that your website is taking more than 2 seconds, so let's try to do a couple of things, or a couple of fixes that you can do. First is try it on different connections. So you can check it on mobile data, on a broadband, and then at different time intervals, and see what is the kind of response that you're getting. Then there are tools like Google has a tool called PageSpeed that you can utilize, and that's where it will also give you insights into the specific issues which are there that you can optimize. And one of very simple fixes that you can do is to look at the banner sizes which are there on your homepage, or what kind of images that you're using on your website. And that's where just compressing those images a lot of time solves the problem of load speed, and that's where you'll be able to optimize the load speed. So that's something that you can do. I can see any member has raised your hand. So at the moment, I'll not be able to unmute you, but what you can do is you can add your question in the Q&A, and I'll answer your question at the end of the session, and I'll also see if I can unmute you, and that's where we can have a one-on-one conversation as well. But at this moment, I'll request if you can add your question in the Q&A section. All right, so let's move to the next point that we have, and this is again related to the website, and that is presentability and completeness. Now, how do you determine a presentability of the website? So that's where I'll again give you a couple of a framework that you can use. So first is it should have the logo, it should have the social media logo, and it should have your favicon also uploaded. So on your website, these are the three elements that you should upload, in case you are wondering what is a social media logo. So a lot of time what happens, businesses have a rectangular logo or a landscape logo, and that's where it does not appear properly when the link of that website is getting shared on social platform. And how can you check that? Just copy a URL of your website or a product detail page and send it to your friend using WhatsApp or Facebook or Instagram. And that's where you will see whether the logo is appearing properly. If it is not appearing properly, that's where you can use the social media logo. And that's where you have to upload a 200 pixel by 200 pixel logo. That will solve the problem. So coming back to the framework that I was sharing with you. So first is you should have a logo on your website. Second is you should have banners uploaded on your website. Now that's where it is not just upload one banner and that's the end of the story. No, ideally you should have multiple scrolling or main banners, and then you should at least have, unless you are a grocery store and you have like 200 or 300 categories. So in that case, I'll not recommend that. You should have one banner each for each category. But if you're a fashion business owner, then that's where you'll have typically half a dozen category or somewhere little over that. So that's where you should have one banner each for each of the categories that you have on your store. Next is navigation. So navigation again should be comprehensive. So that is where for one product type, at least you should have one category, and we'll be discussing more in detail about how you should set up navigation and what are the best practices or rules that you can follow in this framework. The next is products. So you should have products with proper images and description. And the last one is content pages. So that's where you should have at least one about us page. It is better that if you can add more pages like our story, our vision, mission, or your history, how you have grown over the years. So it is always always better to have more content on the website, but at least have about us page on your website. So that's the information page. In addition to that, you should have a terms and condition, privacy policy, shipping, return exchange policy. So all those pages should be there. They are required by the law. So if you don't want to get into trouble, but in addition, a lot of time when a customer is shopping, they would want to have a look at these pages, especially shipping and return related policies, so that they can understand what kind of policies do you have on your online store. So this is a framework that you can follow to evaluate your website is presentable or complete. Now, with respect to presentability, it is something which varies from person to person. It is a personal choice. So that's where you can take a decision. But with respect to completeness, you have this framework which you can utilize to evaluate and do the tick marks and understand what all you need to do to complete your website. All right, so that's where we'll move to the next part in our discussion, and that's where we are moving to navigation. And that's where I told you that we'll be having a little detailed discussion about navigation, because this is something that a lot of businesses, and especially the ones who are doing it for the first time, get a little confused and they're not able to portray their product or present their product in a proper way. So first, it should be simple. So don't use too complicated word, and especially if you are someone from a technical product. So that's where try to use the terms which are used by your customer. How can you find those terms? So that's where you can use one of the tools which is provided by Google. It is called Google Keyword Planner. It is part of Google Ads account. So if you have a Gmail ID, you'll be able to easily create a Google Ads account, and that's where you'll be able to use this Google Keyword Planner. So that will tell you what kind of search. So for example, you are a, let's say, linen t-shirt manufacturer, and that's where you go to Google Keyword Planner and you search for those keywords, and that's where you will be able to understand what kind of terms or phrases are being used by people when they are searching for products, and that's where you'll be able to understand. And that becomes more relevant when you are in a technical product and you are not sure what kind of terms people are using. But for a fashion industry business or a typical retail business, that is relatively easier. You can review a competitor's website and you'll be able to understand what kind of terms you should use. Now, let's understand this little in detail with an example. So just assume you want to buy a polo t-shirt, and this is where you went to this website, website one, and the categorization that they have is they have a men's category. So you want to buy a polo t-shirt. Are you able to get your product? Maybe. Men's may have other categories as well. Let's move to the next category they have. They have fashion category. Okay, wonderful. This is where products related to fashion will be there, but still you haven't found your product. Going further, now you have a casual category. Okay, wonderful. T-shirt is a casual wear, so it may be there. So still maybe you have not found it yet. Then you went to upperwear category. Okay, so casual upperwear. So we are getting there, still not reached. Then you have t-shirt category. Wow, we have reached the t-shirt category now. Now, have you find your product? No, still no, but you are closer to it. And then you have the polo t-shirt. That's where you have found your product. So how many steps did you take? 6 steps to reach the product. Will a customer do that on a marketplace? Yes, maybe they'll do that, or they'll use search. But on a typical vanilla e-commerce website, they'll not do that, because that's too many steps and they'll get confused, or they'll simply may not be able to find the product. Now let's take another example. This website 2, and this is where customer comes looking for a t-shirt, and they have a t-shirt category. Wow, wonderful. We can see t-shirts, and now they may be able to find the product that is there. Then they have men's category. Okay, now it is refined. I'm looking for a men's t-shirt. So the products are refined. And the third, polo t-shirt, and that's where. So within 3 steps, and that is half of the journey which we saw for the first website, they are able to find the product. Now this can be made shorter as well. So this is where website 3, there's a typo in that. And this is where you have t-shirt, and then you have polo t-shirt, simply 2-level navigation. Now, this is the shorter the journey or the shorter customer discovery journey, and let's not use fancy terms. In the shortest number of clicks or in the smallest number of clicks, if a customer is able to find the desired products, that's where you have served your purpose. So that's where whenever you're thinking or conceiving of a navigation, try to keep it as flat as possible. So it is not, I'm not saying that you should not have a taller navigation, but that's where your steps or the customer's steps to find the product increases, and that increases the probability of not getting the order or customer not being able to find that desired product or the product that they are wanting to buy. So that's where it is better to have a flatter or less tall category navigation. Now again, the second point with respect to navigation is about comprehensiveness. Now, with respect to comprehensiveness, ideally, if you have one type of product, you should have one category associated with it. But there are exceptions to it, and I'll explain what are those exceptions. So again, understanding with an example. So if you sell t-shirts and you have a following type of t-shirts, so you have a round neck t-shirts, or you have round neck t-shirts, and you have polo t-shirts, and you have crew neck t-shirts, right? Now, what should be your navigation? So this is where you should have like t-shirts, and then you have subcategories of round neck, polo neck, and crew neck t-shirts. So that's how you should categorize it. So for each product type, you have one category, and that is basically kind of thumb rule that you can follow. But there are exceptions to it, as I mentioned earlier. And what are these exceptions? So the first is when you have like too many categories. I was telling you earlier about groceries. So they have like 200-300 categories, and it is practically impossible to fit all of them in the header of a website. So that's where what they typically do from grocery industry is they combine different categories. So you'll have atta, dal, and rice, three categories combined into one. So if you are not able to fill the entire header, or you have too many categories and they are not filling in the entire header, that's where you can combine those categories, or that's where you can combine a couple of categories, and you can do an exception to this. Or the second is when you have less than 12 products. And why I'm saying 12 products? Because typically a e-commerce grid or e-commerce website grid has 4 products in a row. So you should have at least 3 rows of the products. So 1, 2, 3. If you have less than 3 rows, that's where it will look, or it will appear that you don't have a website, and it kind of gives a impression to the customer that they don't have a website. It looks like a small business, or they are just starting up, or it may not be even a genuine business, so they get suspicious. So that's where if you have less than 12 products, better to combine that with another category. I'll show you one example. So this where in the entire category you have just one product, and that's where if the customer sees this, what kind of impression that they'll get. Or if you see this as a customer, what do you think? Add your thoughts into the comments. If you are a customer and you are visiting this website, by the way, this is a demonstration store, the screenshot that you're looking at. But if you are a customer and you are looking at this website, you went to this category, and that's where you're just seeing one product, what impression will you carry? Just add that into comment. All right, so let's move on. I hope with respect to navigation and categorization, you have now some bit of understanding, and definitely the recording of this webinar will be available on our YouTube channel. So if you want to review this information, you can definitely go there and you'll be able to review this information again. All right, so now let's move on to the most interesting part with respect to the digital catalog, and that is the product page and the product of your online store. And this is where you need to focus the most, and this is where the most amount of work need to happen. All right, so the first element, and I mentioned earlier, we are visual beings. So seeing is believing. So that's where images are the most important aspect. How many images you should upload? So typically 5 to 6 images from different angles. And what are those different angles? So one is a coordinate image, which is typically a full body shot. So if it is a model image, it will be the entire body shot from foot to head. So that's a typical coordinate. Or if I'm talking about a handbag or any other fashion product, let's say shoes, so in that case, it will be a wider shot wherein shoe is put into a kind of an environment, or handbag is put into a kind of an environment. So that is typically a coordinate shot. Then you have the front shot of the product, side, so right, left, back, and then you have the zoom shot. In certain products, you may also have, for example, for a handbag, you will also have the pocket shot, or view of the inside pockets that are there, how many pockets are there. So that may be additional shot. And in case your product has fine embroidery, or there's a particular print that you're doing, or there's a particular art form that is associated with it, then it is recommended that you also add a zoom image, so the finer details of that product can be seen by the customers. So again, looking at this example, so this where you can see there are different images or different angles of the product. So this is the coordinate shot which you are seeing at the moment. Then adjoining that is the front and side views of the product, which are visible. So like this, you'll be able to upload, or you should upload different angles. What should be the aspect ratio? Now, this is in case you are not aware what aspect ratio is. So this is the dimensions of an image, so proportions of an image. So if it is a portrait image or a vertical image, so then how broad it should be and how tall it should be. So that is again very important for a good presentation of your products. So for most of the fashion product, a 800 pixel by 1000 pixel works best. Now, if you have smaller products like wallets or shoes, so that's where you can do 1500 pixel by 1500 pixel, even 1000 pixel by 1000 pixel works, but the zoom does not work that nice. So better to have 1500 pixel by 1500 pixel images. Now, what are the common mistakes that people do with respect to uploading images? So the first common mistake is uploading low resolution or blurred images. Now, having said that, I'm not saying that you should upload like direct DSLR images onto your website. Yes, that is also counterproductive because that will adversely affect the load speed. So compress those images to an extent where the image quality or the visuals are not getting affected. So the image is not getting blurred. To that extent, you compress it and then you upload it. So without compromising on the quality of the image, whatever is the lowest size that you can achieve, you should upload that. Now, is there a thumb rule? So ideally, it should be less than 2 MB. Even 2 MB is on a higher side. You should try to keep it into few KBs or less than 1 MB. Ideally, it should be achieved, but because it varies on the file size or on the source size. If your source image is very large, in that case, there is an extent to which you can compress it without causing a impact on the quality. The second issue is with respect to using images of different aspect ratio. And this is something that I have seen very common. And so there is a portrait image and there's a square image, and both of them are placed together. And that's where it looks very bad. Have a look at this example. So this is where you can see this particular image, which you're seeing on the right side is a portrait image, whereas the image adjoining it is a square image, and they are looking very bad. So avoid doing that. Use the same aspect ratio. So if you're using 800 by 1000, so all the image should be 800 by 1000 in a category. You may be dealing in garments and handbags, and what with handbags, you may have a square image. So then those handbags can have all square images, and all your garments can have the vertical images or 800 by 1000 pixel images. So just ensure that you're using the same aspect ratio, which is not a big deal to do, but that's where you will be able to increase the presentability of your online store significantly. All right, so let's move on to the next aspect, and this is where things will get more interesting, because this is something I'm not sure. And let's understand this with everyone. So do you know how to write a product title, or what are the best practices? Anyone is aware of? You can raise your hand if you're aware of what are the best practices to follow with respect to adding the product title. Let's understand if any member in the audience is aware of. You can raise your hand if you are aware. So I'm guessing no one is aware of, and this is where I'm sharing something which is very simple, but typically we are not aware what are the best practices to follow with respect to the product title. And product title, as we all know, is very important when it comes to explaining or showing the product. This is the first piece of information other than the visual that the customer sees. So if you go to a website and you are on the category listing page, what is the first thing that you'll show? Definitely the image of the product. And after that, title is the second most important thing that you see as a customer. So that's where title becomes critical, and it also has an impact on the search results and search finding as well. So what should be the length of the title? So between 55 to 60 characters, and this is including spaces. So that should be the minimum length. So a lot of websites I have seen, they just add a 2-word title. Ideally, it should be minimum 50 to 60 characters. Maximum, ideally less than 250, although technically you can go all the way to 500 characters as well, but that will be way too long, and customer may not be able to read that. So less than 200 characters, again, including spaces, is something that we recommend. Now, what should be the title format? How should you construct or make your title? What should be included in that title? So firstly, for basic product, and this can be used for any product category, irrespective of whether you are in a fashion industry or you are in a different industry as well. You can use this formula. So the formula is your brand name plus your variant, color. So it can be variant or color or flavor, depending on what product category, and then the keyword which is related to that product, and then gender, and then size or quantity. So like pack of 2 or a specific large double bed sheet, those kind of thing. So those can be added. Let's understand a few examples. So Nike black running shoes men's, that's a shoes example. Ever ready type A battery pack of 10. That's another example which is generated using the same formula that I'm sharing with you. Now let's understand a formula from the fashion industry perspective. So this where you have the brand name, and then you have features or attributes of the product. So whether it is a linen t-shirt or a mercerized cotton t-shirt, so you can add those. And then the product type, whether it is shirt, t-shirt, shoes, handbag, etc., and then gender of the customer. Example, Biva 100% cotton black full sleeve kurta women's. Example for jewelry, and this where because jewelry has other elements, so that's where your brand, gender, features, product name, product type, carat, all that comes into play. And this is where you have this example of a jewelry, which is a bracelet 18 karat white gold. So that's how you'll be able to construct the product titles. And these are the guidelines that you can follow when you are creating the product title. Because a lot of time what we do is whatever comes to our mind, we name the product. And this is where you can do it more systematically by using these formulas. All right, let's move on to now understand what are the issues or mistakes that people do with respect to creating the product title. So too short is something that I've observed is very common. Adding a very short product title, and customer can't understand a thing just by reading the product title. Too long, that's where just stuffed too much information, and that's where again customer can't understand everything. The title is too long. Using all caps, this is where something which is taught in management schools as well, that all caps is something which is difficult to read, but still people do that. So avoid adding all caps. it should be in the sentence case. Avoid typos, so which is obviously understood. Then writing in one language. So if you're writing in English, it should be in English. If you're writing in Hindi, it should be entirely in Hindi. Don't mix up two languages. Avoid punctuations and special characters. Again, they are difficult to read or understand. So that's where you should avoid those. Don't use too many acronyms, or that's where, again, if you're using too many acronyms, that's where, again, it becomes difficult for a common person to understand. You may understand what a acronym means, but other person may not understand. So that's where it becomes difficult for them to understand or comprehend that products. And don't use profanity. That is something, again, quite obvious. So these are the common mistakes that you should avoid while you're creating the product title. Let's move on to the next important aspect, that is product description. And we can divide it into two, which is short description and long description, because that helps present the information visually. But let's understand more from a description perspective what all should be there. So the thumb rule or the formula is paragraphs about the pros or benefits of the product, plus bullet points about the specification or product features, is equal to an engaging product description. And that's what you want to do. You want to engage your customer, and that's how you will be able to do that. Now, points to consider while you are writing a product description. Firstly, who is your target audience? You should always have this in mind. So whether it is male, female, teenagers, or college-going students, so what is your customer, or who is your customer that you should have in mind? What are the product's basic details, so in terms of material or dimensions or product features, etc. So basic details about the product that should be included in the product description. And then when should someone use this product? So for example, a night cream that you might be selling, if you are a cosmetics product brand. So in that case, whether they should be using it during the daytime or at night time. So a specific time of the day or seasonality or specific occasion when this product has to be used. So that is something which you can consider, or which you should consider while you're writing the product description. Where should someone use this product? So whether it is an indoor or an outdoor use product, or that can be used within their car, or when they're camping, or they're on vacation. So that's where what is where this product has to be used. So that's another point that you should consider. And lastly, with respect to competition, so you should also keep that in mind. So how is your product placed with respect to your competition? Whether it is better, what are those points where it is better as compared to your competition? You should highlight those. How does your product work? So how can they use the product? So that's another piece of information that you should provide, or that you should add with respect to your product description. So these are the bullet points, or these are the guidelines that you should keep in mind while you're creating the product description. Now let's understand about the long description. So this is part of the description. It is a short description is displayed along with the product information, and additional information, which is also called long information, is typically displayed in a compressed or in a collapsed form, and customer can review it, because the objective of short description is to engage or attract the attention of the customer, and additional information or the longer description is used to give them more details where they are engaged and where they are interested to buy that product. So what to include in a long description of the product, and this is firstly how to use that product, health benefits, care wash instructions, technical details in case you are dealing in a technical product, manufacturing process related information. So if there is a special process that you have followed to create that product, so you can highlight that, or if there is social cost that you're associated with and buying that product will help that social cost, then definitely you can add that. Next is return, cancellation, and exchange policy. You should include that. And why should you include it? I'll explain that in the coming slide. Then you have delivery timelines. So how you'll be delivering the product and how much time it will get delivered. You should add all that. Let's understand about return, exchange, and cancellation details. So why should you add return, exchange, and cancellation details? And a lot of businesses, trust me, don't add that. It is very important to add these details because it helps the customer in making the purchase decision, because everyone who's ordering online would want to know in how much time I can return the product. That's the basic everyone wants to know. And that's where if you don't have this information, they'll have to go to the return page, or many of them don't even know how to find a return cancellation page. And that's where they may not buy the product from you, and you'd not want to do that. So that's where it is important that you provide this information in the product detail page itself. So while as a customer, when you are looking at the product, you also have the required information right there in front of your face, and you can make the purchase decision. So that makes the purchase decision easy, giving clarity to customers. So that's where it is not customer is not confused. They're giving confidence to the customer. Okay, they also feel good about your business because look how professional they are. They have clearly mentioned about their return, exchange, cancellation policies on the product itself. And I don't. So they are not hiding anything. That's where the customer gets more confident with respect to buying product from you. Avoid unnecessary confusion, so people don't assume when you are presented the information correctly and properly in front of them. Then moving on to the next item, which is size chart. And needless to mention, if you are a fashion product seller, that's where this is something important that you should share with your customers. But why is it important to have a size chart? So better purchase decision making. Again, you're a customer, you are buying a product, and you're buying it virtually, so you can't practically test out the product, right? So in a physical store, you can go and you can go to the trial room and you can try out the product, but on a virtual e-commerce buying, you can't do that. So that's where you need size chart to understand and make that purchase decision. Better conversions, that's something that you'd need. Then you'll need it for less returns in exchange. And with respect to e-commerce, a lot of businesses have this challenge that they are getting too much returns from their customer. And this is something that can help you reduce that significantly if you're adding size charts, so that the customer, when they are buying, they are able to understand whether the product will fit in or not fit in, and what size they should order for themselves. Happier customer all the way around, because if they are able to see or understand what product fits them, and they are able to order the right size and they get the right size, that's where they'll not have to get into return and cancellation. And understand that even customers don't feel genuinely happy when they have to return the customer. A genuine customer will not feel happy when they have to return the customer, because typically when you order something, you want it yesterday. So they want to use that product, they want to avail that product, but because of the size issue, they are not able to do that. And that's where customer also gets dissatisfied. Although you may be exchanging the product, or you may be returning it and giving the money back, still the time is lost. So that's where if you are providing the size chart and they're buying the right product and they are able to use that product, it will lead to a happy and a delighted customer. Let's see this with an example. So this one of the members online store, and what you're seeing on the screen is the size chart, how it is displayed. So there's a button on the product detail page, click on that, and the size chart opens up and it is displayed like this. So now if I'm a customer, I can see which size I should order, and the dimensions are clearly mentioned here. All right, let's move on to the next point with respect to the product detail page. And this is something, again, very important, because this will have an impact on the search ranking. So why should you add metadata to the product? One obvious question. So better indexing of your site by search engines. So whenever, let's say, Google is indexing your website, or whenever Google wants to include your website in the search result, what they do. So they have crawlers who will index your website. So if you have not added the metadata, then the indexing is not done properly. And that's where your website is not shown appropriately on the search engine. And that's where indexing is important. Better ranking of your site on the search engine. So again, if you have not added the metadata properly, that's where the ranking will get adversely affected. Better understanding of the business or product by the person who is looking at this information on the search engine. So this is where if I search for something, for example, I search for buy shoes, and that's where I'm seeing different results, and that's where I come across a result by one of the shoes manufacturer. So if again the information is not added properly, I will not be able to, or I may not be able to understand what this business is, or why should I open this business's website. And that's where your meta information becomes important. What all is included in the metadata? So meta title is 60 characters. Then you have meta description, which is about 160 characters you can add. With respect to meta description, you can go all the way to 320 characters as well, but only 160 are displayed. So that's where this is the critical piece of information. And then you can also add 6 to 10 keywords, although search engine these days don't give that much emphasis to keywords, but they are good to have. Now, when it comes to creating meta title, these are few formulas that I would want to share with you that you can use. So the first formula is product name and your store name. That's the basic one that you can follow. Then you have a little advanced one, which is buy, shop, or browse. So in your case, it will be buy or shop. And then your product name. So whatever is the product name, and then is your store name. So buy, shop, product name, buy, shop, polo t-shirt, online, Shalimar Super Store, that kind of. Next is again similar to it, but that's where you can also include a broader keyword that is relevant to your product. So like a polo t-shirt, or buy t-shirt online, or a hand embroidered t-shirt. So depending on your business requirement, you can add that. That is something that you'll be able to understand when you do a keyword research using the Google Keyword Planner. Now comes meta descriptions. What are the formulas that you can use to create meta description? So that's where the product name, then description, then call to action. So the product name, and then you can add a description and then call to action. But the point to remember here, a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll just put a formula in Excel and they'll do a concatenate and create a meta description. But the point to remember here is that you just have 160 character, that including spaces. So the space or the real estate is very small, and that's where it is better you concise that information, condense that information, and then create the meta description. Next formula that you can use is that's where you move call to action forward. So buy shoes online or buy t-shirt online, like that. So that's a call to action, then the product name, and then the product description. So depending on your requirement, and something with respect to metadata that you have to keep in mind is that it is a dynamic piece of information. So what does that mean? So product information, let's say product title or description, you are creating it one time, and that will predominantly remain the same throughout the product life cycle. But meta information is something that you can keep evolving. So that's where you can understand what kind of results or what kind of ranking you are able to achieve. And that's where you can keep tweaking. So for example, you use the formula 1 or formula 2 for writing the product title, and that's where you realize it is not working well. So that's where you can experiment with the third formula as well. So you can keep modifying or keep changing it as per your business requirement or kind of results that you are able to achieve on the search engine platforms. All right, so that was about meta title and description. Let's move on to the next topic, that is tools and resources. So what are the tools which are available which you can utilize? So this is where I'll be sharing with you few very interesting tools that I personally use and that you can also use. And many of these tools are free, so you don't have to pay anything to use them. First, for keyword research, the best tool is Google Keyword Planner, and this is the URL that you can use to access this website. It is part of Google Ads account, and you'll be able to use that. Then content writing. So we discussed a lot about writing the title, writing the description. So what are the tools which are available? And considering most of us, including myself, we are not professional content writers. So how can we write better? And what are the tools that can help us do that better? So the first tool that I would want to recommend is Quellbot, and the tool that Quellbot has is a paraphrasing tool. So you write a description, you paraphrase it, and that's where you'll see that the quality increases exponentially using AI. And that's where, again, it does not impose its results on your face. It also gives you an option. So if you want to change the words, etc., which you are not liking, you can do that. But a fantastic tool and available free of cost. They also have other tools which are available, but their paraphrasing tool is something that is you can use on a day-to-day basis while you're writing emails or while you're writing product description, and that will improve the quality of information, and it will help you concise that information and improve English as well of that description. Next one is Hemingway Editor. Now this is something which is used by professional content writers, and that's where it tells you. So while you're writing, it will be like a Word document that will get opened up in front of you, but while you're writing, it will keep telling you. So your text will become red or it will become blue, so depending on how long is your words, or if you're using any negative words, so that's where it will highlight that this is a negative word and you can consider changing. So that's another very interesting editor that you can use. The third one is a tool or a content analysis tool by SEO Review Tool, and there's the URL that you can use. Why I like this tool is because this is where from a search engine perspective, whenever you're writing something, so let's say you're writing a product description, now you can review it from a search engine perspective as well. So you're not writing it for your website, you can also review how it will appear on a search engine, and what is the score that is for your content. So that's another tool that you can use. All these three tools are free to use. The fourth one is a AI content creator, which is called Writer. There's another tool called Jarvis, but that is very expensive. Writer is also paid, but they give you 500 characters that you can use one time as a trial, and then you can upgrade to a paid account. But this is where you have to just give bullet points about the product, and it generates that description on its own. So that's if very useful tool and fairly powerful one as well when it comes to content writing or creating a product description using a AI tool. Then you have image editing, and we are visual beings, so that's where image is an important part. Now, what are the free tools that you can use? The first one is Photopea, which is a Chrome app. So it is part of Chrome browser, which you can also download on your device, and you will be able to do a lot of editing using this tool. It is a very light tool which can be used even on computers that are not very powerful, and you'll be able to edit even PSD files or Corel Draw files using this kind of capability. Next is Placeit, which is a browser-based tool, and it is part of Envato. So that's where you get a lot of designs and elements available for you, and that's where you can use this tool to design banners, to update product images, etc., or to design your logo. So that's another tool that you can use. Then you have Canva, which is very popular, and again, it can be used to design your social media posts, your website banner, your website's logo, reorient or edit product images. So all that is possible. The last tool that I would want to share with you is GIMP, which is a open source photo editor. So it is very similar to Photoshop, but it is an open tool, and it does almost everything that Photoshop does. So that's another tool that you can utilize, but you'll have to learn how to use that. So these are the tools and resources I wanted to share with you, which any one of you can utilize, and you'll be able to write better product description, or you'll be able to create better digital catalog for your business. So that's where I will conclude today's session. But before we conclude today's session, let's have a question answer round. What you'll be seeing on your screen is are my contact details. So if you want to connect, you can take a screenshot of the screen, or on the left side, you're seeing a QR code. So you can scan this QR code, and my contact details will directly get added to your phone. So this is where we'll break into question answer round. I'll keep the screen visible for some time, so I can see there are a few questions already asked by members. So I'll start answering those, and then if you have any question, this is the time. Please start adding it to the question answer section. One of the member has asked, can we get the PPT for reference? Yes, absolutely. I'll try to add a download link into the recording of the webinar that is there on our YouTube channel. So the recording of this webinar is there on our YouTube channel, and in its description, I'll add a download link to this PPT. Not a problem. The second is a question. The second question is important, and the question is that if the category is a generic and the visual will not make such an impact, should we add that? Now, understand from what are we trying to achieve here. So what we are trying to achieve here is to present to the customer. So if I'm a customer, I'm visiting your website and I open your homepage, I should be able to understand that these are the categories that you deal in, right? One of the ways in which I can understand is through the category navigation that is there on the top. That is how I will be able to understand. So that's one way in which I can understand. The second option, or the second way in which you can tell the customer is visually. And I mentioned this multiple times through this session, that human beings are visual beings. So anything that we see, we are able to comprehend that very easily. So that's where, if you have this small category name written or that big banner on your website, so that's where the probability of you or a customer understanding that, okay, they have this product category, let's review that, or let's see what all product they have. So that probability is on a higher side. That's where it is recommended. Now, whatever I shared with you in this session is all recommendation. Now, it is up to you whether to use that information or not, but are my recommendation, but you can follow them. Now, with e-commerce or with the digital interface, another thing that you should keep in mind is that it is something that you can change dynamically and rapidly. So add banners, experiment, keep them for 1 or 2 months or 3 months. Let's keep them for 1 quarter. Let's see what kind of conversions are happening, or what kind of traffic flow are happening, how many people are clicking on that banner. You'll be able to make that out from Google Analytics. And if you're seeing that people are using the banner, well and good, retain them. If they're not using it, remove them. It can be done very easily. So keep experimenting, keep trying different things to improve conversions, improve the orders, the number of orders that are coming to your website. So that's where it is in ongoing activity of improvement that you can keep doing. You can keep trying different things that can help increase that conversions. And the goal is, if 100 people are coming to your website, probably you'll get, as per the industry standard, 1 or 2 orders. Now, your goal is to, how can I make that 10, or how can I make that 20? That is your goal. And that's where trying out anything that can help you achieve that goal, you can keep experimenting with that. All right. So any other question from the members, you can ask your question via the Q&A. This is where I can also unmute you. So if you want to have a personal one-on-one conversation, you can also do that. You can just raise your hand and I'll try to unmute you. Yes, absolutely. So on your screen, you can see my details, so that are there. So you can reach out to me over the phone, and we'll definitely help you out with respect to getting professional help in setting your online catalog. Or you can scan the QR code and you'll be able to send a WhatsApp message to me a little easier. So either of the two, whichever is convenient, you can connect with me, and we'll definitely help you out. Now, even if you don't have a question, you can share your feedback, or if there is a particular topic on which you want us to do a webinar, on which you want us to share information with you, you can let us know, and we'll be more than happy to do a webinar or a special session around that. I can see Mr. Prem has raised his hand. So I'll just request Mr. Prem if you can unmute yourself and you can ask your question. I'll also turn off the screen share now. Hi, Mr. Prem. Can you hear me? I can see you have unmuted yourself, but somehow I'm not able to hear you. Mr. Prem, can you please unmute yourself? Or if you're having issues connecting with the audio, you can also share your question by the method of chat, or you can share your question by question answer section also. So I think Mr. Prem is having issues with his audio setup. So this is where we'll conclude today's session. But before doing that, one last minute, if you have any question, so Mr. Kumar has said nice, so thank you. Possible to have some agency who does this, and we have our kids fair label. Yes, Mr. Kumar, as I mentioned earlier, please connect with me, and we will help you out. I'll again share my screen so that you have visibility to my contact details. My contact number, email ID are also mentioned. You can also share or scan the QR code. That will help you connect with directly with me on the WhatsApp. So whichever is convenient, please do reach out to me, and we'll be more than happy to help you out with this. Wonderful. So yeah, I'm seeing there are two participants. Just a second. Yes, Mr. Danish, please unmute yourself and you can ask your question.
Can you hear me? Is this
Yes, I can hear you.
Perfect. So thanks a lot, first of all, for a great webinar. It was very informative. As I actually discussed, asked my question before, I think I wasn't descriptive enough because I didn't want to write like a long paragraph.
Sure.
What I wanted to actually ask was that if let's say if I'm not in a very specific field, which is rather counterproductive when I put images, which is a very generic field, because I'm into pharma. Let's say it's like selling the same products with the same descriptions with like a million of other competitors. Where can I add the value where I actually can make the customer who is just there to research, like Tata 1mg, when people go onto it, instead of actually using it as a e-pharmacy, they are just using it for the information part, that what generic drugs can they substitute with, and then they end up taking the drugs from the retail outlets, which is not actually adding the value to the Tata 1mg. So how can I actually make the difference there and add value in terms of digital catalogs?
Sure. So firstly, where you have to start with is with profiling your customers, who will be the people who will be visiting your online store. So that's where you have to start. And when they are visiting, what is the piece of information that is most relevant to them? Now, what I was sharing with you, or what we have shared in the presentation, is something which is more specific to people who are individuals who are in a retail business. So that's where a typical customer who's going to an online store and wanting to buy a product. So that's where the formulas, and I'm not saying that it is not relevant or important to other businesses. Anyone and any business can use that, but where you should start in, because you have a niche category, or you're from a niche sector. So that's where you have to start with an understanding of your business. So firstly, start with what kind of keywords or phrases people are searching. So that's where you use Google Keyword Planner, understand. Then coming to your website, when you have understanding what people are looking for, that's where you can take that decision. Now, that's where you decide whether I have to showcase a category. If that category is something that people are looking out while they are searching for your products, then you can add that. If it is not, then how can you add value to those products? Or if I am your buyer, right, and I'm coming to your website, what is that important piece of information that is that will impress me, or that can help me understand these are the products that I'm looking to buy? So this is where let me just quickly share my screen, and I'll try to explain this with an example. The question that you have asked is very important. So let me turn off the screen share. What is happening? And I'll just show you one example website. And I hope my screen is visible. So this is a cosmetics or a natural cosmetics brand that you're seeing on the screen. Now, this is where, as a customer, I can go and I can see their range, and this is where most of the businesses have that. Now, this is where, if you come down, this is where you can see the actual value which is happening. So this is where they have different ranges which are associated, and then the different piece of information which are available. Now, I also have this concerned. So this is where if I'm looking for a solution for acne, or if I'm looking for a solution for anti-aging, so the same product now displayed with respect to a concern that the customer may be looking for a solution. Now, in your case, you can take a decision whether you want to showcase your categories, or you want to showcase a concern or a solution that this customer is looking at. And based on that, you can change the banner. So instead of having a banner that is describing a category, you can have a banner that is describing a solution that the customer that you're giving to the customer. Hope I have answered your question.
It does help. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Any other member who would want to discuss anything before we conclude today's session? So I'm not seeing any hands, or I'm not seeing any comment coming through. So that's where we'll conclude today's session. Once again, thank you everyone for taking our time in participating in this session. And before we conclude this session, we'll be having one more webinar in these series of webinars that we are doing related to fashion industry, and that is on 20 April, again 4 p.m. So I look forward to connecting with you in that webinar as well. Once again, thank you and have a wonderful evening.